Technology Simplified, Tech Talk everyone can understand. I'm your host, Will Slappy, CEO for IT Voice. Today, I am joined by Matt Rice, one of the lead voice engineers here at IT Voice, to answer listener questions about upgrading your phone system. Making the switch can be a huge hassle as you consider questions about compatibility and handling the process of change internally. Well, fear not, today's podcast will give you a greater degree of confidence to make that leap into the technology you need to run your business better. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Will. Pleasure to be back.
Well, Matt, I was thinking about kind of this questions we had for today, and, we want to jump into some of the listener questions, but I'm curious before we do that, what are some of the reasons that would drive someone to upgrade the phone system from your perspective?
That's a good starting point, Will. I think the primary reason to upgrade your phone system is because technology is constantly changing. As a business, you need your phone system to be the best it can to support your customers while providing efficiency and value back into your business. Reevaluating where your business is now compared to 5 or 10 years ago can almost guide you to where you need the phone system to be for now and for the next few years going forward. So while we talk about data always being upgraded, we're always upgrading our iPhones, we have to think about our phone system as another piece of that data puzzle. How are we going to upgrade to make sure that our phone system works best for us?
Yeah, that's a great point. And as a CEO, I'm always looking at business processes. And as you were saying that, it's making me think about, that very point of like, does your phone system, you have a new process you want to put in place, and does your phone system support what you want to do from a business perspective, from a customer interaction perspective, and making sure that you have the technology that supports that. So I think that's a really, really good point. All right, so let's jump into some of these listener questions that we've had out there. So what is the process for a typical hosted voice solution installation, right? You got a legacy, solution that's out there, and you want to get a hosted voice solution. So, how long does it take from start to finish? What is that? Just walk us through what that process looks like so listeners can understand.
Well, perfect. Well, the first thing I want to get across is that a hosted voice solution installation is not a difficult process. In a lot of cases, you'll have what some companies will call a project manager or a task manager, or even just a straight up engineer will reach out to your business and ask the base questions that are required, such as, how do your calls route right now? How many hub groups do you need? Do you have an IVR system that you want us to set up for you? But then they follow up with one of the most important questions that's going to be valuable for your business and your phone system going forward. What do you want to change with the new phone system? It's the ideal time for a business to make the changes that they need to and better evaluate their call flow before the system is fully in place. And then once that information is fully gathered by a project manager or engineer, they immediately begin working on that to build the system without having to wait for parts to be ordered for an on-premise phone system. We're not having to wait for licenses or anything. A hosted system allows us to go ahead and hop in, get that phone system started up, and we can go ahead and test some of those functionality items in the beginning. So what used to be a 6 to 12 month process for an on-prem solution can now take anywhere between 60 to 90 days, depending upon scheduling and programming.
Yeah. Well, and going back to where we started, it sounds like a lot of that is as much business process conversations as anything else. The new system has all these feature functionality that maybe didn't have before. And so really the bigger question to be asked from the business side is, well, what do you want it to do? What do you have now? Because that's what I really heard you say. Like you went through a long list of things, which was great. But kind of for our listeners, just to simplify that, because, we're on the simplified technology here, is that, it's here's the list of what you have today. What of that do you want to keep? And what of that do you want to change to be different, for tomorrow? And so I think that sounds like a pretty easy process to be able to do. And the timeline is obviously much better than what it used to be.
Yes.
So we kind of begin to jump into this next question, but, what are some benefits of a hosted voice installation versus, an on-premise installation? And I'll kind of reword this question a little bit from what I've heard just from listeners, as well as kind of like, why? Like, hey, look, I'm happy with my on-premise installation. Everything's working great. I mean, I've already spent that money on it or whatnot. Like, why make a change? Why should I go and, Matt, you make this all sound simple, but why should I even do that if it's all working today?
Because you have to think forward with on-premise physical equipment. There are so many points of failure that you introduce into your system that could mess up and cause your phone system not to work properly, whether it's the actual PBX itself or phones, Having the hosted voice solution where everything is connected to the cloud gives it redundancy, gives it the opportunity to keep you connected to your customers for a longer time.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, like maybe a better question to even ask is like, what happens to your business if tomorrow, the phone system goes down, right? What is the impact? And if the answer to that question is not one that you like, then, maybe a hosted solution. And I know that when COVID hit, people had to go work remotely, whatever, those things were a capability. With a hosted solution, if your building burns down tomorrow, like you could get new phones deployed. You can even just hop on everybody using the app and off you go, continue to run and operate. That if you have a legacy system, you're like, what do they say? SOL, up a creek without a paddle.
You bring up a really good point though, because in theory, in the past, we've thought of on-premise as very narrow-minded, where if the phone system goes off, it all goes to kaput, right? Well, with the hosted solution, we can broaden that spectrum out to where, like you mentioned, if the house burns down today, there's still redundancy available. We can ship out new phones. We can do a lot of options to keep that phone system running for you, where you just can't necessarily do that with an on-prem solution these days.
Yeah. So let's talk about features for a second, because that's like, we've kind of hit some of one of like the core benefits, right? Which I think is great and something to be think about, but I know there's a lot of features. So, once somebody gets up and operational, what are some of those top features of a hosted solution compared to what they might have with their legacy on-site system today?
So a lot of hosted solutions today allow remote updates to the phone system that don't require a lot of downtime, if any. We're able to simply just move your phone calls from one server to the next. In your phone system, you really don't even notice that you're in the middle of a maintenance window. Unfortunately, with the on-prem systems, a lot of times you have to download a license, and then you have to upgrade that firmware on a scheduled time, and that usually does take down your whole phone system. In this day and age, when a lot of businesses are going to 24-hour answering support, you just don't have that flexibility to take down your system for even 15 or 20 minutes, because you need to be able to answer those calls with that 24-hour business you've got.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really, and I guess a lot of that comes in with the redundancy, right? When you've got redundancy in place, because I know, not to get too much into the details, but I know that, when we upgrade our hosted solution, y'all will upgrade one node at a time and slowly bring them offline and back. So y'all are really taking it down in a way, but it because of the way that how it's done in the background, it doesn't affect any of the end users, versus on a single legacy type of solution, then you got to take the thing down and can have some downtime. And then if it doesn't work, all the issues that come along, with that. So getting kind of, diving a little bit deeper into the features, functionality, and we kind of mentioned like the app and those kinds of things, but what are some of those other new tech, the cutting edge things, that you find that users love the most, from just like a pure features perspective that they get with like the UCaaS solution versus a legacy system?
A lot of people like the ability to control how they answer the phone calls. Some of your older legacy PBXs, the call just went to the hunt group or it went just straight to the device. There were some limited find me, follow me features there where it could maybe ring a cell phone, but a hosted solution just broadens that aspect so much larger. It allows you to ring 5 or 6 people if you needed to. If you wanted to go directly to voicemail this time of day, you can have it set that way. It just gives you so much more functionality to make sure that you can answer the calls as a customer or as an employee the way that you want them answered at the time you need them answered.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the big thing that you said there was you control it as the end user, right? That you can literally hop in the app and just, flip a switch and be like, I'm in this mode or that mode. And all of a sudden, instantly your calls start changing, how they're operating. So I think that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg, if you will, there. So let's jump into this question here, kind of the control aspect. How much control does the customer have over the installation process? And I know that's one of the questions we have from listeners, and I know it's one that I hear all the time as well.
So the customer themselves, they're the key to the installation process. And this is even if it's on-prem, but especially when it's a hosted solution. You want to work with the team and provide feedback. It's critical to make sure that your installation process is flowing smoothly and making sure that the customer understands what the system will do for them. As you mentioned earlier, what are these features going to do for me? So it's us explaining to you, what these features do, and then you telling us, well, this is how we want this feature to work for us. So it's a back and forth, but it goes down to the fact that the customer has as much control over the installation process as they want. We even offer in this day and age a self-install, where if you don't want us to come out, install the phones for you, because it's hosted. We can simply ship the phones directly from a manufacturer, and you just plug them into the network and you're ready to go.
Yeah, that's sounds pretty easy in terms of what they can do, and kind of infinite. A lot of what I'm hearing you say there is it's kind of as much as you want to have. I think those are the words you use, is as much control as you want to have. And obviously the more control you have, the more work you have to do. So that's kind of a balance for you to decide. So the next question from some listeners was, what was the main obstacle to overcome during a hosted voice installation?
So I have one primary obstacle when we run into a lot of these with host solutions on our end, but I know this is something that could be in general as well. We want to make sure that the customer network is set up for the phones to connect to a cloud server, and make sure that their local network is set up so that voice traffic, it gets priority and is allowed to make sure that calls are effective and have good quality. It's a worst thing in the world when you're on an important business call, all of a sudden you hear crackling, and it's either because you don't have the right network set up or you have a problem with your internet. So being able to overcome those obstacles in the installation process by setting up, such things as VLANing and whatever items that are getting more detailed, it allows you to make sure that you're on the right foot going forward. But if it's not, handled at the beginning, it does present major challenges to us. One thing with phones and managed IT, a lot of times people will merge those in together. So if you're getting a hosted solution, maybe you look at having the managed IT being by the same vendor. That's a good option to have, because that managed IT will understand how the phone network needs to be and set up the network to make sure that your phone and your data side are able to work together efficiently. And also, it's just one point of contact if you have a problem with either.
Right. Yeah. And you bring up a great point there, Matt. And just, to put any of our listeners at ease, this is only a problem if you don't address it, right? If you proactively address it, it works extremely well across the network. And the problem that we've seen, as you described, is when somebody doesn't address it, they just throw the phones on the network, and then on the backside, all of a sudden they start running into issues. So a fairly easy thing to solve if you proactively go about, doing it. And a great point you made there as well about, having the same group of people that is currently over the network and the IT side of things involved, at a minimum involved, and possibly even the same people doing it, can help make sure that the smoothness of that transition is what a company wants. So I can imagine that some of our listeners, after kind of hearing all the things that we've talked about with the benefits and the redundancy and, the app and the portal that they'll be able to get access to, and they can change all these things and the new processes. I mean, this all sounds so great and wonderful, so if I'm putting myself in a user's, shoes out there, I'd be like, well, Matt, that sounds great and wonderful, but I'm sure this costs like twice as much as what I'm spending now. And, I don't want to necessarily spend more money, I understand all the benefits, but, I think I'm okay with where I am, so can you talk about the cost? Like, the question I guess would be is like, how much more will this cost me to have a hosted solution than possibly what I'm spending now?
So this is where you get into a little bit of the capital versus operating expenses discussion with the hosted phone solution, because you pay by the seat, so you pay by the individual, and a lot of times it can be a lot less. With your on-premise system, you had to buy the physical hardware, the physical software, licenses. Anytime you want to purchase additional licenses for new users, that process takes time because you have to reach out to the company, purchase a license. That could take 1 to 2 business days in a lot of instances. One of the good things about a hosted solution is that if you want a new seat, which in a lot of cases is less than an average license, it's a lot quicker to get that, because you just, reach out to your local sales rep and say, hey, I've got a new employee starting Monday. We say, great. We send it over to the engineer, and in probably 15 to 20 minutes, your new user's ready to go. So no need to wait 1 or 2 business days for a license to be renewed or anything that we mentioned a minute ago. You have that cost is going to be down because your time spent on the phone system waiting for the licenses will be decreased, and the cost itself for per seat is usually a lot less than it is for a whole on-prem instance.
Yeah. It that makes a whole lot of sense, and I think the important thing for listeners to understand is that what a hosted solution allows the provider to do is get this economy of scale, right? Because they have this, big system that they're leveraging all these resources, and they're not creating their own geo redundancy for each and every customer. They're leveraging the infrastructure that they've built. And so the incremental marginal cost for them for each added user is much lower than if they went out and built dedicated systems for everybody. And so now they can offer that at a cost-effective way to each of their customers. And like you said, in many cases, it actually ends up costing less and is faster and takes less time, which I think is an important, note. And the reason why so many people have gone in this direction already is because, hey, you get more for your money than what you're spending today and put yourself in a better position of reliability. So I think those are all really great things to note. So last question here, before we gotta wrap things up, do you have any suggestions, final thoughts, for our listeners for making sure a business chooses the right provider?
Absolutely, I do. It's important for any business that wants to look for a provider to have the full trust in that partner for that provider, and they want to be partners with them. It's not just a contract. You can love the phone system that you're looking at, but if you need service on that system and you can't get the quick quality responses that you expect from your provider, then really what good is that phone system for you? You want to look for a provider who can offer you multiple lines of service. It's a great place to start. We mentioned it earlier about having maybe a provider who not only can do your voice, but also do your IT. They do your internet. The ability to bundle as much as you can gives the employees and the customer the right choices when it comes to picking a provider. And then once you find the right partner for that hosted solution, you want to be as involved in the process as possible. We talked earlier about how much control a customer has. I highly suggest be involved with the process. You're heavily involved when you select your server. You're heavily involved when you select, what cloud instance you're going to use. So you got to think about your phone system like the cloud in this part, because it's hosted, it's in the cloud. So why not take those thoughts and facts into consideration and look for the best solution, because that's going to mean more money from your investment.
Yeah. Those are some great points there, Matt. And thanks for all the knowledge that you've imparted to our listeners today. So that'll wrap up another great episode of Technology Simplified for us. Thank you all out there, listeners, for joining us. We hope you found today's discussion on selecting the right business phone system valuable for your organization and maybe give you some more of that confidence you need to plow forward with that decision. If you have any questions or topics that you'd like for us to cover in future episodes, feel free to reach out to us. Some of this episode came from some of y'all's thoughts and questions in the past. So reach out to us on social media or through our website. We're always excited to hear from all of you, our listeners. Don't forget to subscribe to Technology Simplified wherever you get your podcast. Have a great week, everyone.